Well, yesterday Riot gave us a lot of topics to talk about, and among those was the new cinematic called The Call. Of course, today we will talk about all the important things that happened in this cinematic, because yes, this is actually 100% canon, to a degree where it is very interesting to see just how precise this cinematic is when it comes to the lore. But before we talk about it, I have to say, people thought I was crazy when I mentioned that the stories on Universe were teasing what would happen in the next pre-season cinematic. But yes, I was correct, and those stories were indeed a prequel to this cinematic. But now, without further ado, let's have a look at the cinematic, because it is teasing all the stories that will happen this year. We begin with Ornn crafting a weapon. Now, throughout the cinematic you may have noticed that Ornn didn't do much, and that's likely because Ornn is teasing the storyline that will happen this year. We know that a Void event is coming, and Ornn might play a role in it. Now, normally Ornn had such a small role here, it wouldn't even make sense to make a full cinematic model for him. So the reason why we can see Ornn here at all is most likely because he is going to be used in a future cinematic. Because remember, Lucian and Senna were reused in multiple different cinematics, so it is highly likely that when the Void event arrives, we will see Ornn again. We then shift to the Freljord, where we can see Sejuani riding Bristle. Normally, Bristle doesn't have braided hair, so it's really cool to see how in this cinematic, Sejuani is using Bristle's braided hair as the reins. Of course, behind her we can see Olaf, who might be my favorite character of this cinematic. But also we can see that she only has a few warriors of the Winter's Claw with her. That's because in the story called Dead of Winter, it was revealed the Winter's Claw was scattered around the Freljord. Sejuani scattered them around so that they would have a higher chance at survival. The less mouths to feed, the better the chances you get to eat. We can also see that they are heading into the Ursine territories. In the same story, it was explained that they are going there because they want to reclaim the Cauldron of Ornn. Long story short, whoever sips from Ornn's cauldron doesn't have to eat for a year. And apparently this cauldron was stolen from Hearthhome by the Ursine, who are of course Volibear's followers. The Ursine stole it because they thought Ornn was making humans weak. If they want to survive, they better fight for it. Regardless, that's why Sejuani is here. In the Shuriman story, we see Taliyah and Kai'Sa in Zolan. This is a small region in Shurima, which also was described in a story called The Faceless God. In fact, the faceless statue in front of them is actually the statue of the Faceless God. Of course, we know that gods aren't really real, and the god is actually an ancient ascendant of the Shuriman Empire. This is a statue of the ascended Zolani. Anyway, in the Faceless God story, it was revealed that the Void was swarming underneath this place. However, a few hours before the cinematic was released, we got another story called Hollowspun. In this story, Kai'Sa met Taliyah and her friends. At the time, Kai'Sa was trying to defeat the Void, while Taliyah was just helping her people. But they both learned that Zolan was invaded by the Void, and so they both traveled here. Taliyah because she wanted to reclaim a city of her people, and Kai'Sa because she fights the Void. We then get to the Targonian storyline. This one is a mystery to us. We don't really know why Pantheon would be trying to get to the peak of Mount Targon, but you can see that he is approaching a Solari portal that would take him directly to the peak. We know that Pantheon, or as we should call him, Atreus, hates the Aspects, because they dominate humanity and treat everyone like worms. So we can simply assume that Pantheon is going to the peak of Mount Targon because he wants to fight back the Aspects. I think there is going to be more happening in his storyline, but that's likely going to happen throughout this year. Back in Freljord, we can see a really awesome design of Olaf. Honestly, I love him so much. Please just give him an ASU. And behind them we can see the Ursine. Super long story short, the Ursine worship the Volibear. Because yes, in the lore, Volibear is called the Volibear, because he is seen as a primal force of Freljord. And they worship him to such a degree that the wild powers of the Volibear just take over their bodies. That's why many of them don't look like humans anymore. We can then see that as Pantheon approaches the portal, the Solari try to prevent him from entering, and Atreus slams his spear down. This is his symbol for peace. Then in Shurima we can see that the Zersai, which are Rek'Sai's brood, ambush our two heroes, but the two defeat them all together, which causes a massive sinkhole to open up. Back in the Freljord, a lightning causes a massive chunk of ice to tumble down, and Olaf casually shatters it with his helmet. But here we should mention one tiny inconsistency. You see, canonically, Olaf is supposed to be massive. Olaf is as tall as Sejuani when she is riding on Bristle. But here you can see that he is just slightly taller than the others. Canonically, people believe Olaf's mother slept with a troll, but no one ever said it to Olaf's face. Actually, if you go to the frame right before this, his size seems to be accurate there, so I don't know what happened to the scaling in the next frame. We can then see Olaf throw his Hoarfrost axe, and it gets parried by one of the Ursine. This one is definitely referencing Legends of Runeterra. And as it calls upon the powers of the Volibear, interestingly enough, you can actually see just normal Volibear. That's because these Ursine are not the maniacal wild ones. These are normal shamans calling upon the power of the Volibear. There are also the brutal wild Ursine, whose vision of the Volibear is a bit different, and they kinda corrupt the image of the Volibear. Then on Targon, you can see that even though Atreus tried to call for peace, the Solari still attacked him, and so he defeats them all without a weapon. He most likely did it because he doesn't want to harm the humans, he is only after the aspects, so he tried not to kill them. During this fight in the back you can see the sun coming up, which is followed by Leona descending from the heavens. Interestingly enough, the Zenith Blade is perfectly canon accurate. It is blazing with the power of the sun, that's why it appears to be on fire. And after seeing that he now has to face an aspect, that's when Atreus picks up the spear. In the Freljord, one of the Ursine calls upon the lightning of the Volibear and hits Sejuani, making her fall on the ground. On Targon, a similar thing is happening. Atreus' fight with Leona is broken up by a star falling down. Now, we don't exactly know what these stars are. Yet again, this is a mystery of the cinematic. We can assume these come from Aurelian's soul. And that's likely because Aurelian has to be important for the Void event. Aurelian's soul is one of the few creatures in this universe who can close the Void rifts. So for a massive Void event, I really hope we get to see Aurelian there. And then there is a shot of Ornn making another weapon. Actually, throughout the cinematic he only made one sword, but the point is the same. I truly believe this cinematic is teasing the fact that during the Void event, Ornn will be crafting weapons for everyone. He will be the one arming the champions for a fight. That's why it looks like Ornn is preparing for a war. And then we can see that Atreus fell to the bottom of Mount Targon. Yes, this is symbolic, but when he looks around he can see all the other people who also failed to climb Mount Targon. Either that, or there has been yet another battle between the Solari and the Lunari. But I believe these are all the failed attempts, because while some of these weapons are obviously Solari, other weapons definitely come from different regions. Anyway, in the background we can see that there are more stars falling down, and in the middle of them we can see Leona's light, because during the previous scene I don't think Leona was shot down. Regardless, the reason why there likely are stars falling down may be because previously, and this is just a theory, Pantheon was the one who held Aurelian's reins. It was the aspect of war who held Aurelian under control. But now that the aspect of war is dead, and Pantheon is obviously not in control of Aurelian, it is possible that Aurelian has regained some form of control over himself. Now we assume that the reins probably transferred to another aspect. For example, Zoe is talking about toying with Aurelian all the time. But it is still possible that Aurelian may try to rebel against Runeterra. That would explain why Leona too was surprised to see the falling stars. They weren't called down by the aspects. But still, right now, those falling stars are a mystery. Back in Freljord, we can see the lightning killing off the rest of Sejuani's soldiers. In her own words, that's less mouths to feed. And then in Shurima we get this exchange, Kai'Sa's acceptance and Taliyah's worry. That's because they both know exactly what Kai'Sa is about to do. Then there is an obvious reference to Legends of Runeterra. But yes, Kai'Sa taunts Rek'Sai and jumps down into the void. This is to make sure she leads Rek'Sai away from Taliyah so that she stays safe. Or more than that, she wants to lead Rek'Sai away so that Taliyah can help rebuild Zolan. In the Freljord, there is also another very tiny inconsistency. Sejuani is using her True Eyes weapon to fight the Ursine. However, the pain from wielding that weapon should be so high. She should constantly feel unbearable pain. A few times in the canon lore, Sejuani actually used a gag so that she would have something to bite on as she wielded her flail. Here she just seems angry, but not really in unbearable pain. For a few frames right before she screams into the distance, she sees Volibear's face in the clouds. Atreus then calls upon the remnant powers of the dead aspect, and from this point on, the cinematic starts to tease what will happen this year. We can see Taliyah destroy the statue of Zolani, so she can cover up the Void Rift. Ironically, in the story that came before this, there was a person who was hired to fix the statue's face. Taliyah did the exact opposite. The last scene where Pantheon appears is where he jumps into the sky and right into the stars. Once again, right now, we actually have no idea what he's planning to do, but we can assume it is going to be related to the Void. Who knows, maybe he will take control of Aurelian again, and he will force him to close the Void Rifts around Runeterra. Sejuani's story then ends with her and Olaf with only a few warriors left charging at the Ursine, so I assume in the next Sejuani story we will read about how she is going to get the Cauldron of Ornn. And it ends with Kai'Sa still taunting Rek'Sai as she's falling down into the void to make sure everyone on the surface is safe. And in the final shot we can see Ornn finishing the sword. Specifically, this is some kind of a rune sword. I wouldn't be surprised if this was teasing a skin. Because, as you see, just like during the Sentinels, we had the Sentinels and then the ruined skins, I really wouldn't be surprised if we got Void Corrupted skins, and then the heroes who are gonna fight them being armed with Ornn's weaponry. We can call them Ram Forged skins. And I wouldn't be surprised if all the champions shown in this cinematic become main characters in that event. Maybe we will see a Ram Forged Leona, and maybe she will wield this blade. It is possible that everyone will wield a weapon made by a god. And that's what Ornn is teasing here. Because as you saw, Ornn didn't really do anything. So his presence has to be teasing something. So it seems like he's teasing the fact that he's preparing for war. And the weapons he's making will be used in the fight against the Void. To close this video, we need to mention one more thing. Yes, it was confirmed that a Void event is coming. We saw that during Riot's presentation. And yes, we already know what the Voidy Jungler will be about. At least roughly, even though they didn't appear in the presentation. That's because, in Malzahar's new story, he described the next champion. The Empress, as she was referred to. So yes, we got another event on our hands. And interestingly enough, Riot is scaling down how many champions and how many reworks they are going to be getting out this year. The last time they scaled down their work, it was because they started working on 4 new games. Funnily enough, long time ago I even made a video about that. So this time, if Riot is scaling back what they wanna do, maybe, just maybe, they are gonna put those resources into the Void event. And maybe we'll get a PvE event. It's wishful thinking. It would be great if it happened. But I just wanna know, why was Victor teased? He didn't even appear in the cinematic!